What I wanted to do is to say that tomorrow you will be receiving a ballot on October 10th. You will then be given between October 13th and October 20th to submit your ballots into the Dean's office. And on November 3rd, we should make the announcement officially. Okay, so we're going to follow the protocol that we've established and move forward in that way. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Kent Porter, who also served as our moderator during our initial phase of our changes in the college. I want to thank him for agreeing to give his time today and for his willingness to come out and join us. He said to me, "Do we really have to do this?" I said, "Yeah, we really have to do this. Look at all the people who've come out." Yes, we really
Yes, we do, yes.
So I'm going to turn it over to Kent and to Stephanie at this time.
Good morning. The format for this forum includes, first of all, a statement by Stephanie, in this case as the lone nominee, to take about 5 to 7 minutes to introduce herself and to discuss her qualifications. And there were 3 key questions to be addressed. 1, describe your strengths and how they have prepared you to take on the role. This includes skills, knowledge, and disposition. 2, describe the ways in which you envision the 3 branches and the 3 branch chairs working collaboratively together. And I can break this down if necessary, Stephanie. And lastly, describe how you will ensure equity and transparency across the college and the branches. For example, assigning courses to faculty, assign time, policies, and budget. Following her introductory comments, there will be questions that have been submitted by faculty and others that I will ask her. I was given a list of 10, and then following that, there'll be an opportunity for an open forum Q&A. Again, this is intended to be a conversation, a dialogue. While there are some structured elements to this, once we get past introductions and the structured questions, hopefully there's an opportunity for a nice exchange between Stephanie and all of you. I will help try to moderate by keeping not a speaker's list, but maybe a questioner's list, so everybody has an opportunity in good order to be able to ask any additional questions they may have. Any questions or comments before we proceed? Very well. Stephanie, you're on the clock.
I'm on. I have my little timer here too. I do. It helps me a little bit. So once again, thank you for coming out to the Forum of One. I was asked to talk about my qualifications, and I've been I've been in the Department of Teacher Education and Teaching Credentials since I've entered the university, so that's over 11 years. And over that time, we've kind of overhauled the curriculum twice. And it's been a very interesting and painstaking, at times, process going through that. But I think in the end, we were all able to learn so much about each other's programs and create a curriculum that we thought was the best for our students, especially, I should say, the second time around, which is the most recent one. And during that time, I think one of the strengths that I brought to that process was my ability to collaborate with my colleagues as we wrote courses. I know Margarita and I wrote a couple of courses together. But there was a lot of change that happened in the single subject program, and I think it was through our collaborative research that we did and looking across programs, across the CSU, across the state, across the nation, that allowed us to bring a focus to our candidates and what they experience and how they experience it and over what timeline, that allowed us to create a pretty unique program that I've actually been able to share with colleagues across the CSU, especially in Chico. I went up there the other day to talk to them about both our single subject program and our multiple subjects program. What is so nice about our new program is that we've been able to bring together 3 different departments to create the Teaching Credentials branch. And not only in this time, but across the 11 years, I've been able to collaborate again with colleagues and really ask them about their areas of expertise, not only to enhance my own knowledge, but to bring that to my classrooms. So I remember the first time that I had to that I was assigned to teach the PAC support class, I went directly to Marcy Merrill, and we had lunch together a couple of times, and I said, I need to understand this academic language rubric. I'm not understanding it totally and completely. I need to understand it. And so at different points in time, there were places where, for example, Kathy G gave me some information about universal design for learning. And so that's something that I'm actually bringing to the multiple subjects meeting to think about how can we incorporate these 3 general questions about multiple representations, etc., to put it on our lesson plan template. And so I think that as a faculty, we do well drawing from each other's strengths and bringing that together to create the best programs that we can. And that's something that I've done personally, but certainly with the help of you all. Most recently, we actually came together for the new generation of educators. It was a call that came out from the Chancellor's office. And we got an opportunity, a small group of us from across all of the programs in the Teaching Credentials branch, to dream big, to think outside the box, to create big ideas and change actions, to submit. And we haven't quite heard back in terms of the RFP, but we were thinking about our programs and how to make them better. And I'm sure I'll get that question better, where do you see the programs going in the future? But we've generated some really interesting ideas that at the end of the month, we're going to bring to the Teaching Credentials branch meeting and begin to share what some of our ideas are and how we might be able to work on them to once again improve our program. I think the biggest thing that I have done across the 11 years that has allowed me to gain some knowledge and skills, and I'm going to say negotiation skills, was coordinating the Pulse and the linked learning cohorts and really building some strong relationships with districts, with principals, with teachers. Because we all know if we're going to try to get student teaching placements, you don't just have to build relationships with the districts. You have to be on the principal's good side because they are the gatekeepers for their particular schools, but you also need to know something about the teachers to ensure that you have good placements. And so building those relationships and putting out fires, we know we're always putting out fires, counseling students in terms of providing them support, but often counseling them through longer periods of time in our program or counseling them out of our program, depending. I think building those types of skills will definitely prepare me for the position. And finally, I was also a grant coordinator for the linked learning. Oh, I forgot to explain what that is, which is it's an approach to secondary schooling. From the student's perspective, they are prepared for college and career simultaneously. So they get all their A through G requirements in their core classes, but in addition to that, through electives, they have electives that are pathway-based, theme-based, kind of industry-based. And so they're small learning communities, sometimes in and of themselves, like Health Professions High School, but sometimes they are small learning communities within a large comprehensive high school, such as the Corporate Business Academy at Johnson. And so we had a grant that allowed us to build a cohort of student teachers who were interested in teaching in those types of pathways. And it has kind of blown up in a good way, meaning that there was the Career Pathways Trust. And in the Sacramento region, meaning we're part of some of these grants, have secured about $21 million to expand the idea of pathways in secondary. And in our program, what that meant for us was gathering together some faculty to be the cohort faculty for this linked learning cohort, and thinking about ways to bring in linked learning themes into our coursework on top of what they already do. Moving on, can I move on to
just got one more minute.
1 more minute, okay. So how do the 3 branches work together, and how, in my opinion, and what do I see in terms of collaborating with the branch chairs? Well, I think we all know we collaborate for a faculty workload. And that's a process that I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the 2 others. That's a process that I know they've tried to make as transparent as possible. There's a process in place. I think we're all aware of the process with the preference form. And I know that the 3 of them and the 3 of us then would get together and think about filling the coursework need. And when different types of requests come up, that would be something to discuss both with the 3 branch chairs, but also it could be one-on-one with the faculty member. Because, you know, for somebody like me who usually teaches in teaching credentials, if I make a request to teach in the graduate or the undergraduate, it's like, what are you doing, Stephanie? Why are you making this request? Is there, and so it might be that you have one-on-one meetings with them. But in general, the way that I see this is that there's a process, we create the process, we vet the process with the faculty, we work through the process, and if there are glitches in the process, then we work it out together, and in a way that is transparent for all. That was almost a minute. Probably
Almost
a little bit over.
Yeah, I wasn't counting. Okay, among the questions submitted, the first question is, please discuss your views about the new Common Core and the next generation science standards, and your views about the standards implications for our program, both now and in the future. And I can repeat any portion of that along the way.
Now, it's interesting that that's one of the questions, because the committee that I was talking about and the new generation of educators, the reason that we got the call from the Chancellor's office in the first place was we were thinking about how can we best prepare our candidates to implement the Common Core standards in English Language Arts and Math and the next generation science standards. So we've already been kind of working on ideas about that. What is interesting about the new standards across the different content areas is there are practices that go along with those standards. And those are the practices that we as faculty will also implement into our courses. So we talk about making an argument and justifying it with evidence. That would be something that we would want our students to do, to mimic, so that they understand what the practices mean and what that means for their teaching, so that they can better go into the classroom and implement the Common Core standards. Needless to say, we're going to make them aware of the content standards, but I think across the board, the idea of some interconnectivity among different subject areas, as well as the teaching practices, that's really where the new knowledge, or I should say that's the newness of the standards compared to the old standards, and that's where we focus on.
Second question is, please discuss your work with local districts and how that work might inform your chairship in the future.
So I already alluded to it a little bit. Both Pulse and Linked Learning, for the most part, were focused in the Sac City Unified School District. And so I've been meeting, and we as a faculty have been meeting with the Sac City districts for the past 3 years. Again, building relationships, calling on principals to see if placements are available. The 2 things recently that I've been working on is the Sacramento, I believe it got changed to the Sacramento area Pathways to Success, which is a collaboration among Sacramento State, both undergraduate and teaching credentials, Sac City College, and is it Casumnes that comes from Elk Grove, and then Elk Grove Unified and Sac City Unified. So I'm on the curriculum committee there, and it's been an amazing process of coming together and thinking about curriculum from undergraduate all the way through teaching credentials. and actually even lower, because one of the things that we talk about in those meetings as well is those linked learning pathways, and how to get the students from the pathways into the community colleges or the undergraduate programs here, and then hopefully through our teaching credential programs for those who are interested in going into credentials.
You may have already addressed this in your introductory remarks, but the question is, please speak to what you see as the specific strengths of your recent restructuring efforts in our branch and areas in which we might further grow in the future.
So I can speak to both multiple subjects and single subjects a little bit more specifically. And I think that our strength that comes from the reorganization, comes from the collaboration that we've had. And both programs, I think we're aware that we had BMed separate from teacher education, separate from special education, and now the BMed faculty and the teacher education faculty are working in the same programs. And I think because of that, our work around academic literacy, around CDI methods and ELD standards and all of that, I think has really strengthened our programs, both in multiple subjects and single subjects. Where I see us going in the future from here is also thinking about ways to bring in the ideas from special education and thinking about how can we collaborate across programs there. It was interesting, I was looking at some of the documents that we created during the reorganization, and one of our ideas way back when was, wouldn't it be nice if all of our teaching credential candidates could have some core curriculum that they take together? And that's something that we weren't able to implement, but would be an interesting thing to explore in the years to come. Because I think that over time has been a weakness in at least the single subject and the multiple subjects program. Both the students don't feel as if they have enough information to be able to teach students with special needs in a way that would be most productive for them. But we also hear that from the field as well through some of our surveys.
How will you assure that there is equity with all faculty in terms of teaching 7 p.m. classes as well as supervising student teachers? Obviously a very interesting question.
A very specific question. I think that goes back to the process that we have for assigning workload. And it might be that some faculty maybe really like to teach the 7 o'clock classes. But if that's not the case, then can we think about a rotating basis or something like that? And then, so there was something about 7 o'clock classes and something about, supervision.
As well as supervising student teachers.
What I thought was interesting is when Pia first started as a branch chair, she made it really clear that we all should be out in the schools and doing supervision. And I remember at first I thought, it's been a really long time since I've been doing supervision. However, once I got the supervision assignment and got out there, I thought, oh yes, this is why it's important to have supervision. So I know some of us might think of it as a chore. However, I do really think that it helps us keep connected to the public schools, and we can bring a lot of what we see and learn back into our coursework and into the program. But the question was about equity, and so I think, again, there is a process, and we'll implement the process, but I think it's important for all of our faculty and teaching credentials to be able to get a chance to supervise our student teachers in the schools.
The next question is actually preceded by a statement. The statement is, recruitment is most important for bringing more students, especially in programs where there are few students that have enrolled in the different programs. Question, what specifically will you do as chair to encourage recruitment in each area group?
That is a great question. I know that we've been talking about recruitment strategies for years and years now. And I think working with the equity coordinator and thinking about how we both recruit within Sacramento State, but also outside of Sacramento. Sacramento State is very important. One of the things that I'm involved in right now is the Mathematics Teacher Education Partnership. I'll call it MTEP from now on. And it's a national partnership, but we also have a CSU partnership as well. And one of their areas of research and implementation is this idea of recruitment. And the whole idea of the partnership is to create these best practices. So I think through our collaboration with MTEP, we might get some really great ideas. There's a university in Texas, and it has a U-Teach program, and their strategies for recruitment have been proven to be great. And they do a lot of it through social media, a lot of it online through, could be bulletins and all of that. But I think that our candidates who are coming in are very tech savvy, and they are connected on social networks. And so for me, the way that I think about recruitment is through those means, but also pounding the pavement and getting out there and putting a face on a program as well. So I think that you need that dual sort of approach for recruitment.
Okay. Halfway through the questions. Number 6, will you have an open door policy when it comes to people in your department being able to see you? Oh. Tough question.
I think my door will be closed always. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important to be available to everybody. I think it's important to be able to answer questions and directly address issues as they come up, because certain issues I know for me, I think about and I say, oh, I need to really deal with this right now. And it's so easy just to go up to the 4th floor, I peek in, I see that Pia's door is open, I go kind of knock on the door, and we have a conversation right then. And I think that's something that I know that I would duplicate as well. So anytime I'm in my office, that would be a time that my office door would physically be open, but then I would be willing to talk to anybody who came by. And please invite me to lunch still.
What makes you the best choice for this position? In other words, why should I vote for you for chair of teaching credentials? Excuse me.
Well, you can see I'm up here by myself, so possibly it could be that I'm willing to do the job. However, one of the things that I've been able to do, like that face, one of the things that I've been able to do is actually teach in each one of the programs. And although in special education I just did the math methods course, I think by teaching that course and talking with the faculty members who have been in charge of mild, moderate, and moderate severe related to the students who were in my class, I certainly learned a lot more about the program. But regularly I meet with whenever the multiple subject has their meetings and when single subject has meetings. So whatever week we're in on Thursdays right now, this is my day of just meetings. Because the multiple subjects and single subjects is back to back. So what I'm trying to say is I think I have a handle on the programs. I work very regularly with the faculty members, and I look forward to learning even more about the special education program because that's the program that I know the least about.
Interesting question here. How do you propose? Okay. How do you propose to bring the College of Education together when there is such unprofessional behavior among individuals within their own departments and in the college as a whole? I wonder if this is a question I should be doing.
The assistant dean said that was next week. So.
I think that the best, honestly, I mean, I'm happy to answer the question. I think the best that I can do in this role is to model professionalism, collaboration, make sure as much as possible that when we're in professional settings such as meetings that things don't escalate. And honestly, that's probably the best that I can do. I would work with the other branch chairs and think about how to address this issue if it escalates to a particular point.
And have my number on speed.
And have your number on speed dial. And work with the associate dean, whoever that. Kevin?
How do you view the leadership role of chair in the College of Education?
How do I view it?
How do you view the leadership role of chair in the College of Education?
I think that there are a couple of different ways that I view it. First, I see it as a leadership position when it comes to faculty, because there's certain things that you have to do in terms of assigning workload and thinking about how do you lead a group of faculty in a collaborative manner to tinker with the programs, redesign different aspects of the program to make them better, and to meet the needs of our students, of the community, and our candidates as well as the faculty, to be able to draw on the strengths of our faculty as well. But I also think part of what you do is you're a representative of teaching credentials. You are the face of teaching credentials out in the field with the public schools, and so that's another way that I see it. But in some sense, I believe that you're a representative of the college in general, and often it could be the whole entire university. So I think there's a representative type of thing where you're there to share and receive information and to show your professionalism as well as your knowledge of all of the programs. The other piece of it that I certainly have learned from Pia is to draw in some of the newest research, some of the interviews. You're constantly kind of sending the interview things out to us, but keeping the faculty abreast of the things that are going on in the field that the faculty may or may not know about. And so that's what I see as a leader.
Okay. Last question, and this seems to be a repetition of what was asked of you in your introductory statement, but how will you work to ensure equity and transparency across the branches?
Do you want me to answer that again?
Sure, why not?
Okay. I think by working with the other chairs, and I'll just reiterate the idea that oftentimes there's a need that needs to be met, or there's an issue that comes up, and I think collaboratively we create a process that is then vetted to the faculty. And we talked about, does this seem right? Is this equitable? And I think once we come to consensus in terms of the faculty, then we work as hard as we can to implement that process in a way that's equitable and transparent. But inevitably, there's going to be some issues that come up. And I think that if you address the issues head on, if you address the issues one-on-one with faculty, if something doesn't seem to fit, and really have some open communication in addition to the collaboration, then I think the transparency is there and the equity is there as well.
Very well. Those are all the prepared questions that were submitted. This is now the opportunity for us to move into open dialogue. Rather than a massive group discussion, I'll do my level best to try to keep a speakers list. And my apologies, because while I recognize most of you, I don't know all of your names. So if I say, how about the lady with the big hat, and I'll point, no offense, hopefully that'll work. So is there anyone who would like to begin the dialogue?
You're all being far too nice.
Let's just take a vote and we're done. I mean, truly, this is an opportunity to chat a little bit more, either about things that Stephanie has said, additional questions you may have, points that weren't raised either in the introductory statement. Yes?
How do you plan on staying connected with CPC?
How do I plan? So that is a great question, and one of the things that I know that is happening right now is I happen to be on a listserv, and so you get the updates in terms of that. Certainly, I know that you are probably a little bit more closer to CTC, so I think that we would regularly talk to make sure that my understanding is what's most current. I know that Pia happens to be on a particular committee. I'm not sure how she got on that committee, but I would love in any way possible to become a member of one of the committees in CTC as well. So that's my plan. Keeping up to date through the internet and other things that they kind of push out.
Anyone else? Oh, come on, guys, you're not that shy. I know better.
Just wait time, it's okay.
Okay.
We're used to it. Thank you.
Marguerite.
I know you began to talk about this already as far as your vision regarding some aspects, but what else do you see as something as far as projecting long-term regarding vision of especially the credentials branch, not only just immediate, but also even things that might get started during your term and then transcend with next person?
I think there are a few things that we've been talking about that we're ready to begin work on. For example, in the single subject program, we only have a 2-semester program. And we need to think once again about how to get to a 3-semester program. So that's a simple one that I know that is coming up. It may not transcend because hopefully we'd be able to implement it during my tenure. The other thing that I know we've been talking about, and something that was a very vital part of the old program, and now we're starting discussions, is the idea of a professional development school, and several professional development schools in the Sacramento area. And that might be an interesting thing to explore, because it would, I think what it would do is there's a place where our student teachers could be, but also the teachers who are at the school could experience professional development as well. And I know some of our ideas were to be able to place special education candidates, multiple subjects candidates at the same site, and depending on the grade range of the schools, it might be a special education candidate with a single subject candidate going on the same site. So I think the idea of professional development schools might take some time to operationalize, but I certainly see that as something that at least we're considering at the time. I think that those are a couple of concrete things, but in the rest of this semester and next semester, with the new generation of educators, this is where I think as a branch, we're going to really start thinking big about how do we improve our program? How do we consider best practices that are out there and bringing them into our programs? And I think through that process of brainstorming, we'll start to begin levels of implementation that would go beyond the 3 years that I would be in the position. But for me, I think concentrating on how to bring the special education program and the single subject and multiple subjects programs closer together to capitalize on the strengths of our faculty, I think is something that certainly we want to work on, and we would do that over a period of time.
Vanessa.
Stephanie, can you talk a little bit about your management style and how you will address issues of conflict when it arises not only with faculty but also among staff? That's part one. And then can you talk a little bit about how you would begin to work with staff to ensure that they feel included in all aspects of the work that goes on in APS as a whole?
Did you say APS?
Academic Program Services.
Thank you.
Yes. Because one of the things we're trying to do is build this collaborative across all of the staff in the area, and so oftentimes there are issues that arise, and so if you could talk a little bit about what your thoughts are in general. You don't necessarily have to have a massive plan to change anything,
No, and I think if I had a massive plan to change things, that there would be a revolution. Because
Yeah,
I
we
think,
like revolution.
I do think that so if you don't mind, I'll address the second one first. I think there has been, or I know that there has been a big transformation in terms of how the staff are how they collaborate with one another for the good of the College of Education. And that has been something for faculty. I know we have to get used to. Who do we go to now? What do we do? What's the new process? But I think constantly the staff staff members, they're so good at thinking about, here's a process, and okay, so maybe if you try it this way, it's going to work a little bit better or a little bit more efficiently. So we tried this, it didn't quite work, why don't we try that? And so I think in terms of that, you asked about my management style, and it's very collaborative in nature. I'm not one of those people who's going to have, a complete top-down approach and you do this and you do that, because I think there's expertise among all of us that we could bring to the table. And one of the things that I teach my students, because our focus in math methods right now is on mathematical discussions, is together we are a lot smarter than any one person by themselves. And that's the way that I think that I would think about my role as a branch chair, is together we are better, working collaboratively. And so in terms of the conflict, I think that that's the approach that I would take. When it comes to conflict with faculty, I believe it needs to be addressed right away, certainly. And understanding what are the issues involved, and once I understand the issue, I might seek consultation with others to figure out how are we going to do this, but constantly communicating with whoever is involved in the conflict as well, and keeping them up to date and trying to understand where does the conflict stem from, and maybe that's what we focus on, is where the roots are of the conflict. Did I answer both parts? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
In what ways will you support faculty to do their own research and continue their own professional development? And sort of what ways do you see yourself as a chair being able to do that?
Well, I think that the way that I see it is, you've definitely seen this over the last probably semester and a half, that there has been more and more opportunities for faculty to participate in research, to apply for both assigned time and actually, the summer award for research, things like that. And you're probably aware of the protected time for writing. And so, number one, making faculty aware of all of those opportunities and encouraging, but also actively seeking ways to collaborate with somebody who might be in Deidre's position. I can't even remember what her position is called, but she is the one, she often brings grant opportunities to us, and that would be an important thing to tap into. So working with the university level, and bringing information from there to the faculty, because it doesn't always filter down directly to your inbox, let's say.
Margarita?
Yeah, I have another question, actually. A major concern that several of us have is the numbers within, for example, a single subject. That we have over 100 students, but we have about 30 who are students of color. So that's a big disproportion of, as far as students that are out at our schools, and then the teachers who are actually teaching the students. So my question to you is, what are your thoughts with respect to that, and what plans do you have in order to have our numbers be more reflective of the students who are out in our schools?
Well, I certainly think that our recruiting strategies is a place to start, and working in conjunction with the equity coordinator, but also thinking about ways to work with the ethnic studies department and Raven's team in math skills, because I think it's through the communication and collaboration there, and in a way kind of advertising for our program from the undergraduate so that they can see a clear pathway up to the credentials program, that's where we're going to get kind of the most bang for our bucks. Because it might not be that we have the resources to be able to put the one-page ads in every single week and all of that, but in order to recruit more students of color, I think it's one of those things, again, that you have to go out and you have to do something and you have to be face-to-face with people and talking to them about our programs and about what it means to teach. Other things that are happening out in the community in the secondary schools is there are certainly Future Teachers of America's clubs and pathways that are education pathways, and to create more, or I should say closer ties with those factions to be able to draw more people into our program. But I think there are ways that on our campus that we could recruit more. I know that there's a lot that we are doing now. I am aware of the things that we are doing now in terms of recruitment. We have to be more effective though to increase the numbers to the proportion that you're talking about.
Yes.
So I have a process kind of question.
Sure.
If there was a movement towards some initiative, what process would you take? For example, students are, with our decreasing master's programs, students really would like to have, let's say, a master's of teaching while they get their credential. What process would you go through to create sort of that possibility?
I think we've actually, since the reorganization of the college, there's been a couple different opportunities that have come forward. And I think the process that we have, which is a process that I would continue, is to bring issues to the branch and in collaboration with the other chairs as well. And so if it's something like a Master's of Teaching program that I know we've been talking about for, I don't know how long, but it seems it comes up again and again, that would be something, again, to investigate first as faculty and within our branches, but also to think about in terms of the chairs and what would make this work. What do we already have? What would we have to implement? Can this work, and in what way? And so I think the process that you're talking about is a collaborative one. Often we form ad hoc groups to investigate things. That would probably be one of my first steps. So what is needed in terms of bringing the MAT to reality? And just involving as much faculty as you possibly can, rather than having, we always talk about a top-down approach, but I think it's important for everybody to be invested in whatever programs you want to bring to the different branches.
Anyone else? Vanessa, your pleasure.
My pleasure.
Well, it's my pleasure being here, but if there are no other questions.
If there are no other questions, I want to thank Stephanie for her willingness to participate in this forum and to share her thoughts and perspectives on the role of the chair in terms of teaching credentials. I want to thank Ken Porter once again for agreeing to come out to moderate and to help us move this forward. I want to thank all of you for your willingness to come in and participate and listen to Stephanie as she shared her thoughts about her becoming the next chair of teaching credentials. So, hearing no other questions for the good of the order, you will receive a ballot in the mail. And so from there, you will begin the voting process, and then we'll move forward from there. So unless I could make this by acclamation, but I'm going to follow our process and move forward. So thank you all for coming out.
It's just a long weekend. This is what I do. It's very questions. I'll say the rest